Hello, this is Sergio, and this is Rahkeem.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rahkeem Morris. I'm the founder of Aday.
Yeah, and we are here for the Founders Podcast. This is the first episode where we interview our early stage founders about their experience, and they share the real experience of what's going on. So it's meant for aspiring founders and other early stage founders to understand the chaos and the challenges of starting, going from 0 to 1, and how to exactly do that. So thank you, Rahkeem, for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask him some obvious questions that I know the answer to, because I've known Rahkeem. Where he's based out of the Harvard Innovation Lab, and that's where we are right now. So thank you, Harvard Innovation Lab, for letting us use the space. But yeah, do you want to? We'll just chat. You don't have to talk to the camera. They can watch. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So Rahkeem Morris, as I mentioned before, upstate New York native. Worked at GE and Google in the past, all in finance, and right now I'm in my last year, specifically my last semester at Harvard Business School, and I'm working on a startup. It's called Aday. It's a workforce management application for businesses that employ hourly employees. Okay. And what we're doing is we're trying to change the fundamental assumptions that employers have about their employees and improve their business operations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit of how you got, how you got to there. How did Aday begin?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Aday began. So initially, I wanted to create a new age temporary agency. When I was 18, I worked for a company called Labor Ready, in a temp agency type role. I worked for, I still remember the name of the place. It's called Aaron's. Aaron's makes, or they do rentals for appliances and whatnot. So when I worked there, I had to move refrigerators around this warehouse. Didn't have a really great positive experience, and that stuck with me over 10 years later when I came into HBS. And when I came here, I knew I wanted to work on something related to workforce management, improving lives of employees and team members, while also improving the P&L of any business that we were to introduce this application.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. So how did can you talk about how you even came up with the idea and the first things you did? It sounds like the business has changed since we last spoke. So I would love to, I would love to hear, but yeah, bring us to the very beginning, just you, where, when it went from a thought in your head to the first actions.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the very first action. So before I came to HBS over the summer, I did this trip across the country, and
cool.
I just wanted to sort of think more about what I wanted to do with this business.
Okay.
And so
you knew you wanted to build a business.
Absolutely, right before I came to HBS, which I think a lot of people come up with their ideas and their concepts while they're in school. I knew I wanted to work on this before I came to school.
Okay.
And over the course of this trip, I had my notebook, was taking notes. I went through all these historical sites. Came a lot of these crazy ideas. One of the things I did over the summer and over this trip was 10 ideas per day.
Awesome.
And it took me about 14 to 15 days to go from San Francisco all the way to Boston by Amtrak. And by the end of that, I should have had 150 ideas. I actually had over 300 ideas.
Okay, awesome.
And I took all those. I went to a new venture competition, their kickoff pitch there, found the first programmer. And then from there, I took another course, actually cross-registered at MIT, a course called Urban Labor Markets and Policy. I wrote this 40-page paper about my platform. It needed to be different, its benefits to team members, how I wanted to revolutionize the HR function, integrate operations, and the fundamental assumptions about how we want to work to change and how we thought we could create a win-win solution for both team members and for businesses.
Yeah. And why this space? Were all your ideas around people and companies and management of companies, or were you thinking about starting a business for healthy food, or how did you decide on that space for you?
Absolutely. For me, I have worked hourly jobs for behind a desk.
Okay.
So over the course of 8 years, from the time I was 14 until I graduated college at 23, I had about 12 hourly positions. So I worked at Taco Bell, I worked at Pizzeria Uno's, I worked at a dialysis unit. I've worked a lot of places, and I knew I wanted to do jobs that focus on hourly employees. And so it really didn't waver in terms of the target market. I wanted to really be able to introduce this application in the lives of people that I wanted to affect. So that has never changed. I would say what has changed is more the business model that I initially thought I would go into this business, and then also sort of the branding and the marketing around it as well. So, I think that it's one thing to say that you want to help out, team members. It's a different thing to think about what businesses need and how do you merge those two.
If they're your customer. Right.
Exactly that. Yeah. So that was definitely a switch in terms of a sort of a B2C type play to strictly a B2B type play, and really being able to sell to employers that they need to develop their employees, especially through on-the-job training.
Got it. Yeah. Because since you were there since you were in that role, that's what you wanted to affect that population.
Absolutely.
Got it. So you were the in the role of the customer you wanted to sell to.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then talk about the first. I mean, when I learned first about Aday, well, let's simplify it for a second. In the beginning, who was the customer and what was the business model? And if you could walk through how that changed.
Definitely, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So what did it first? Actually, let's just start with what was it first?
Yep, it was just a temp agency.
Okay.
It was called Attempt Today.
Okay.
So it's spelled ATEMP.
Okay.
.today. And it was to bridge the needs of the employer, which is, hey, someone called in today. I need a temp today to come in and backfill the shift. And for the employees, you wanted this to be sort of a aspirational type message in the sense that, what will you attempt today? What is something that you can bridge from like your day-to-day, your work life to something you want to accomplish greater. And for that greater sense of meaning and purpose in the platform was better training. A lot of people in a temp agency, that work for temp agencies, they don't get proper training all the time. And if you go online, you can find dozens and hundreds of reports of employees. They're going to work on their first day and they literally kill themselves because they're not able to operate the machinery correctly. And that's just one of many, many, many examples how training can affect someone's life in a very, one in a permanent way, whether it's through the accent I mentioned or through the way that they're developing themselves and able to use this as a bridge to get a better opportunity in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were a temp agency, so employees would register with you, and then companies would come to you and get that temp labor to work, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it'll be strictly temporary. Yeah. So I should also explain what a temp agency does, because it's not always well known how temp agencies work. So I can speak about my own actually experience doing this. So when I worked for Labor Ready, the day that I worked there, I signed up all my forms that I had to do for a standard W-2 income earning job. I was hired that day, and I was fired literally the same day. Because it's like what their model is. And so it's not legal, or you're not supposed to send someone to a job that is considered to be low skill or medium skill jobs on a 1099 contract. And so what they do is you go through the standard hiring process. You do the job for the day, and then at the end of the day, you're fired, and you get a paycheck at the end of the day. And that's how temporary agencies work.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so there's other ones that you have longer contracts, contingent workers. For example, a lot of places in Chicago, they have temporary employees, and they'll hire them year after year after year, all on contract. And it's just a way for companies to be able to upsize and downsize their employees given the demand for their product. And so if you understand that, and now I'm transitioning into what it was before from temp agency to what we have right now. So if you understand that the reason why employers, they use temporary workers is for this exact reason. They want to be able to upsize and downsize their employee or their staffing in accordance to what the derived demand is for the underlying product or service that they sell. when you look into retailers and to restaurants and food industry employers, what you'll see is that nearly half the employees are part-time employees.
Mm-hmm.
These part-time employees, they're essentially temporary workers.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this is just one of the many, many reasons, it comes to this underlying fact that they use the part-time employees to fill in those gaps and to load balance their staffing demands
Mm-hmm.
for either that one location or across the employer as a whole. So what that means is that if you're a full-time employee, let's say you work at Dunkin' Donuts, you don't always get a stable schedule or predictable schedule week after week. However, you're reasonably guaranteed to have 40 hours per week.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a part-time employee, that is not the case. If you're a part-time employee, your hours tend to fluctuate more than a full-time employee. And your primary function from the employer point of view, at least, is that you are there to fill in the gaps in the schedule that the full-time people aren't able to do. So for the transition from what I was doing before and what is was two things. One, for that underlying reason, again, the load balancing to use those part-time employees essentially and functionally as temporary employees. And secondly, now realizing and understanding that if you want to use those employees, you need to have them on W-2 employment. And so now we actually work with to better manage their workforce staffing requirements.
Okay. But what about, let's rewind back to can you talk a little bit about, how you got started? Like you're like, what was your first, partner or customer, and what exactly did you guys do? Like what, yeah.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can talk about my process of getting to our current pilot right now. So currently we're on a pilot.
Or even before that, like what
yeah.
your first, when we're trying to help like early stage founders like that are starting from scratch. So like when you first got the idea of like, okay, I want to be this temp agency. What did you do?
Yeah.
What was your first steps?
Definitely.
Like what companies did you talk to? What people did you talk to? Like how did you seems like there's also two sides. You have to get a base of people to be employed, and you have to get a base of people that want to employ them. Like, can you talk about how you walked into that?
Definitely. Yep. So on that point, I had the idea, just cold called people and say, hey, we have a group of, at this point, I've recruited my team. And so
what do you mean recruited your?
So like my first programmer on my team, I had me and another person. So it was three of us working on this problem together.
So you pitched at the pitch thing, and you had nothing before then.
Absolutely nothing.
Just an idea.
Just an idea.
Got it.
Had a business plan.
Okay, so you created a business plan.
Yeah,
okay.
Business plan, executive summary. We had a lot of early success in terms of this being strictly an idea. And entering that into competitions and doing pretty well in that very, very early on. So
like what? So when you like what competitions did you enter? I know I'm getting specific. I'm like pulling out the nuggets. Like how did you know what to put in a business plan? Let's start with that one. Like how did you know what to even put in there?
Yeah. So how did I know what to put in the business plan?
Yeah.
So a little bit of that obviously and clearly came from some of the courses I took at HBS.
Okay.
And then secondly, if I were to make a book recommendation, I read a book called Lean B2B.
Okay.
And more or less like goes through everything that you need to know in terms of starting up a B2B startup.
Okay.
And so I read that book. I put together our executive summary, just hammering on the ideas that were emphasized in the book. And once I had the executive summary and the business plan, this is around November of, I suppose, 2016. 2015 actually. I start entering that into competitions, strictly based on the idea alone.
Okay.
So we were able to get into the semifinals of the Baylor New Venture competition, of Harvard New Venture competition.
Okay.
We were able to get into Mass Challenge over the summer.
Okay.
The Holt Prize with their accelerator as well.
Okay.
Code written at all.
Okay.
Just strictly based off the idea alone.
Okay.
And from there, we actually launched our proof of concept October 2016, the application for our proof of concept.
Okay. But before you did the proof of concept, did you reach out to any businesses?
Yeah, so at that point, yeah, so that's the cold calling I did after. So we had some traction in a lot of these competitions.
Okay.
And then at that point, I reached out to the businesses and said that, hey, there's a lot of people that think this is a really great idea. We would love to build this product for you. We're a team of students from Harvard. We really just want to be able to gain the experience of first, like product development. And then secondly, we want to be able to see exactly what we need to do in order to benefit your business and how we can work best for you. And then from that point, it was actually pretty easy to get people to, especially if you tell people that, hey, I want to do this for my summer internship, or I want to spend my time full-time solving a business issue for you. And especially if you're able to sell yourself in a way that, I've worked in finance before and at a big tech company. My co-founder had, worked as a computer engineer for several years, about 4 years before. So we had a lot of in my eyes, it's still still well-qualified people to do the job. And we work with one customer, one client for about 6 months. And now, at the end of that.
And who was that?
So initially it was Restaurant Associates. I'll tell you a bit more about that. What we did with them, and we actually piled on about 4 additional clients in the beginning, just for customer research. Okay. So I built out all of the designs and the prototype and the combination of Sketch and Envision.
Okay, so you use those two. Okay,
absolutely, they were phenomenal.
Just visually in those two programs, Sketch and Envision. Okay.
Absolutely, and then every single week I met with a manager to review what I had done, get their input, and iterate over the course of 20 to 25 weeks.
Got it.
Before we wrote 8 lines of code.
At all these, you said Restaurant Associates, or okay?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and there's other companies we were working with in terms of the client or this customer research in terms of building out sort of the prototype that we knew that we eventually.
Because weren't you working with Be Good, right?
Yeah.
That
so okay? That was that was in the past. However, that was more of the proof of concept.
Okay.
So we now had that as we know that this works. And we wanted to build more of an enterprise level application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's
so what types of, is that the first, so you first started with Restaurant Associates, or you first started, like, who was the first?
The first,
the first customer.
The first paying customer?
Or the first customer, like the first, like you created the Envision prototypes. Who was like just walk me through like the very beginnings of like getting that, you wrote the business plan, got early traction. I think those steps are clear. The next step of like, you made phone calls to these customers. You're like, oh, I think I'm gonna, they would buy. Like, who's that first customer, and how did that happen?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I'll speak more about the Restaurant Associates, that arrangement there. So essentially we worked, well, I sent it to their HR person. So I sent it to a person who managed the HR function, but on a store level basis.
Cool.
And then that went to a couple different levels in the organization until I eventually reached the VP of HR in the company.
Okay.
And what we said to them and said, hey, we want to do this, the customer research. But I think more importantly, in terms of understanding the client and exactly what they needed, we interviewed about 20 of their employees. So initially we went in and say, hey, we want to be able to do this consulting project in a way. And
you had, and that's where you iterated each week with the Envision prototypes?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, not only their company, but the other companies. However, after we did all the customer research in terms of doing the iteration with the prototypes, we narrowed it back down to a single pilot, which is the initial customer or client that we worked with, which is Restaurant Associates for our enterprise level product.
Okay, so that's what they purchased it. So you were iterating with, so Restaurant Associates, you would, let me not take the words out of your mouth. Like when you talk about using Sketch and Envision and iterating, can you talk about what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, yeah. So Sketch is, and this is just for the video. Sketch is just a tool, very much like Photoshop. You can almost think of it as Photoshop specifically for designing applications. Obviously, it has other features, and you could likely use it just as a Photoshop substitute.
Yeah.
However, if you look at most of the people that use it, they use it for web design and also mobile design. And hope I'm still on the right
yeah. No, I
can.
Yeah, I can for the podcast. I can add more details and add links to the tools. But once you create these mock-ups and then you bring them in front of your the managers, the intended users, and they gave you feedback and then you made changes and you went through that cycle. Can you talk about how you went from, okay, they gave you feedback to bridging to now you're paying me for a product? Can you walk? How does it move from, oh, this is a really cool idea to now it's real, it gets real. Somebody gives you money. Right?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think the for us, so that the inflection point was it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It works. So one of our main value propositions, I suppose, almost like proving our value proposition, was the fact that one of the main issues with the client is that they had a hard time contacting all qualified employees in a given period of time. So imagine that you're a manager at a restaurant and someone calls in for the cashier shift. They had an issue with, one, complying with any rules, any workplace rules. That includes if you're a union employer, any rules that you have to comply with the union. So they had to take that into account. That's the first one. And then the second thing they had to take into account is the people who are actually certified and qualified to do that one position.
Yeah.
And we took those two factors, we put that into a communication system, which is based off of our mobile application and text messaging.
Yeah.
And we show that, yes, we are able to reduce the time it took you before, which is about 60 minutes, to get someone to say, yes, I will take the shift, down to 6 minutes with our new
I guess I'm going back. Let me go back to more of the how, like people that are, so you explain to them how it creates, saves the money in a sense, or creates value, but saves them money in the end. So you're in doing the different mock-ups, like how did you go from just pictures of what your application would look like to now they're gonna pay you for it? Where is the, what are the steps in there? Like you said, you had a team members. Were they doing something in the background, or what was were they building? That's my assumption, but what's the
So right now we're a team of 8.
Okay.
And I am one of 2 people who haven't been trained in either computer science or has had a job, or my primary function was coding or programming.
Okay.
And so once I was done with the designs at the end of those 25 weeks, we already knew what we wanted. We already knew what we wanted to build.
Was it 8 people the whole time from there?
It was about 7 at the beginning of this past summer.
Okay.
And we recently recruited an 8th person for the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you started, you said you pitched and you said you had 2 people join you. Yes?
Yeah,
2?
that's correct. Yeah.
So there's 3 of you. And at that point, you just had the Envision prototype. Was that the 3-person team working with their first customer?
Yeah. So
okay.
So we did have some initial. We were coding something, but that was likely a mistake.
Yeah.
Because we really just needed to validate with the customer that this was something that they would buy in the end. So that was something that we made it very clear during all of our iterations of the meetings that we had.
Okay.
Like, hey, we need to build something that you would actually purchase at the end of this whole arrangement, this whole engagement with you.
And they didn't pay you to do that.
Nope.
That was okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was just us just going in and learning from them week over week. So we did some programming. Frankly, we threw away all that code.
Yep.
That was a waste of time. And at the end of the 25 weeks.
But a waste from you learned along the way that you could. But so you went from with that team of 3, how did you go from team of 3, and I guess you threw that all away. When did you go from the fake mock-up to the real thing? And can you talk about how the team changed over time?
Yeah.
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 Like what happened?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of the 25 weeks,
Mhm.
we went to additional clients and said, hey, we've built this with these existing 5 clients.
Mhm.
They think this is a really great idea. Will you review it? So we had not necessarily letters of intent. We had additional engaged clients. And so
Okay.
at that point, I was able to recruit literally 4 additional people just with the buzz that we're getting so far.
Okay.
So we made it to the finals in the venture competition.
Awesome.
And at the same time, we had this product that, even though it was just a prototype at that point, they were clearly very committed clients who wanted to use it. And I used that as a leverage to recruit additional people. So literally at the beginning of the summer, I was able to recruit 4 people who are still working with me now. And we raised a little bit in terms of friends and family, just a couple tens of thousands of dollars, not a lot, just enough for us to be able to hire contractors over Upwork over the summer. So we had about 6 contractors work with us over the summer, in addition to the 7 people that we had.
Okay, on Upwork.
Yep, on Upwork, yep. And so in total, we had about 13 people working on it at once.
Okay.
Yep, so we were able to build this literally an enterprise level application with security, with all the bells and whistles over the course of 12 weeks, because we knew exactly what we needed to build.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so.
Okay. So you're at the end of the 25 weeks before, you said you had, when you say, oh, we knew exactly what we needed to build, you had the exact like mock-ups. You didn't build it yet, right?
Exactly.
And then you recruited more people to make something that was ready, and used Upwork.
Yep.
Yep. To do that.
Yeah. In the end, we had about 80,000 lines of code in about 12 weeks with 13 people.
Wow.
Because we were extremely focused. We stayed to the plan. There was nothing that we had to alter or to change over the course of the summer. I had already beaten it to death with all the clients, and we were able to incorporate about 90% of all the input that people had.
How did you know how to? It sounds like you said 13 people. Like 13 people on Upwork?
6 people on Upwork and then 7 people on the current team.
So how did you know how to manage that process?
I didn't. I didn't at all. So I would say like the first 2 weeks we were working with people on Upwork. I think it's easier when you have people in person. It's easier to manage people.
Okay.
And I think that firstly, it's like ran into some issues trying to scale up with that many people at once.
Okay.
And then we started looking to more of software engineering management tools, things like Jira. Which is a big one. We also look into another program. I feel like I'm like selling this now in a way, but it's called AHA. It's a product management software. We picked those up in the first week or 2.
And you recommend those? They help you?
Oh my God, they're so great.
Okay.
Yeah, especially AHA. And then Jira could probably speak for itself. I think it's a much larger company, especially in terms of revenue and users.
Okay.
But AHA is also amazing.
So going back and looking at, let me see how we're doing on time. Okay, got let's do a couple more minutes. I know I've asked you a bunch of questions about different things. Can you talk about, everyone wants to know, everyone says well, let's go back. You said like, okay, I built this in 12 weeks. I mean, I remember you trying to build and things getting pushed out. So what's it? Tell us a little, like, can you talk about some of those? Like, it sounds like from the way you said it, like, it's like sharing with some of the early founders, right? It's like, it sounds like you made a plan and then you just, execute. You're doing good at selling it. Like, what's the real, like, what were some of the hardest challenges? Like, what were, like, you don't have to sell me or us, you're like doing well. Like, what's the, like, you've made it to here, you're moving. Like, what were some of the things that that kept you up at night? Like, what's that,
Yeah.
Like,
definitely. Yeah. It's
like, if you could pick one thing and just talk about it.
Definitely. It's like, how do you keep a team together when traction isn't so good? So that's what kept me up at night. So I said before that there's a whole bunch of code that we threw away. And it's because of all the mistakes that we had made. We began building the product before we knew what we wanted to build.
Okay.
We didn't design out the product beforehand. We went into it looking to find a customer for a solution that we had created ourselves.
Okay.
We had created a product and was looking for a customer.
Got it.
And then by the way, we just like literally we're not using a single line of code from our first code.
So let's talk about like that first, you had that first product, like be more specific, like who used it for what and what happened that like disappointed you? Like
yeah, absolutely. Yep. So I was mentioning, I gave an example of getting employees, someone calls in for the day.
Okay.
And you need to find a backfill for that shift for the day.
Okay.
So our initial application did that. The thing is, it didn't have a lot of traction in terms of literally managers they weren't using it.
Okay.
So
you built it, the first version, you built it and they weren't using it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was because several reasons. I'd say the first reason is that we weren't through customer research and how our application fit into their normal work process. Going to be the case for anyone building any application, whether it's B2B or B2C. It has to feel natural, just something that they are used to doing on a day-to-day basis. And it has to be something that it just flows, and you just need to be something that flows and not a hammer that you're throwing into the middle of their day.
Okay.
And that's what our first application was. It wasn't part of their work process.
Okay.
I think it was absolutely something that they needed. We designed it in a way that we sort of put it into day-to-day work cycle. It just didn't fit in at all. And we just didn't take the time you need to take in order to really build an application that people want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you make it through there? Like what got you from building an application, you put it in front of them, they weren't using it, and like how did you go from there to we're building an application in 12 weeks?
Yeah. So it's just you have this the proof of concept worked in a way that like we were able to tell that we can save employers money through this method, but no one used it. But we realized that they should be using it more. So what we compared is, okay, the number of times they were using traditional methods, the old way, we had it, which is the new way. And so they were still using the old way 90% of the time.
Okay.
So that fell way below our expectations, and we just knew we needed to go back to the drawing table. And we sat down, we decided what was the next course of action, and it was just to blow it all up and start over again.
Okay.
With a new approach, and just having that post-mortem meeting, coming up with all the different reasons why
it didn't work.
Exactly that, and then the top 3 priority things that you need to focus on in the next couple of weeks to make sure that you don't do that again.
Cool. What are some of the things that helped you through in terms of tours, prayers, tools, whatever it was, like what were, whatever it is, what helped you like through that period?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say that one, having a good team, good support. You can't build it by yourself. And if you don't have a team, you can't raise funds either. So you absolutely need to have a very strong team who not loyal for the sake of being loyal in the way that you have the same vision and you want to accomplish the same thing. And that is something that fortunately I was able to find in my team, people that stood by me when. So it was I'd say it's definitely the first thing that helped me keep the motivation that this was the right course of action, that I just needed to try again, but perhaps in a different way.
Okay.
So, and then the second thing that sort of kept me in the game and kept me going is I had done all this research. I literally wrote this 30 to 40 page, single page paper about this platform and why it should work. And that was my reason to believe. And I had done so much research that I truly believe, and I still, because I'm still working on this, that was my reasoning of existing. That was for the business, at least. That was the reason for the business existing, because I was able to point out all the holes in the current products in the market on a fundamental and theoretical basis. I explained why this should work, and I was able to provide a path for the future for the company. And so, being able to see that light at the end of the tunnel through just the research alone helped me a lot. And so I had the support and I had the plan. Actually, just one more note on the support, also find advisors. So fortunately, we're at the iLab and we can go ahead and get office hours with entrepreneurs and residents. There's funders and residents. There's a lot of people that come here that have a lot of industry knowledge that you can go in and ask some questions and more or less just like change your business overnight. And I say overnight because there was actually a tidbit of information I got from someone who is a current advisor now. Just literally one line that helped me think about this business in a completely different way.
Okay.
And
what was that line?
We are also doing scheduling automation. Okay. So he pointed to industry that I had never researched before, in a very specific way that they do their scheduling. He had some industry, airline industry.
Okay.
Yep. And so just doing some research in terms of that and how they do dynamic pricing for the seats on the airlines, and then making parallels into how we can use something similar to our business. As a result, we changed fundamentally what we're doing. And this is also at the same time I was writing this paper. So I was able to really be able to craft a completely brand new way of thinking about what we needed to do and how we were to accomplish that.
Okay.
Yeah. And so those are really the main two reasons. I can dig for a third one. Cool. I feel like.
No, yeah. I'm going to pause here. And if you want more, we're going to keep going. And you can check out more on the podcast. So thank you for joining us. We'll be back.